So we're here to talk about Birdability. We're a brand new nonprofit. We're 18 months old as a nonprofit. We have a staff of 1. That's me. Although we're about to bring on our second staff person in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting because we have a national and international reach, and it's been very exciting and a lot of work because we've got a lot to do, but it's really, really good work. And I think you'll I hope you'll agree, and I think if you do, I think you'll find ways that you can help us in this work from this presentation, because birding in the outdoors is for everybody and everybody. So what do we know? We know that time spent in nature is good for us. Many of us just sort of inherently know that when you've had a stressful day, going for a walk or sitting by a lake feels really good, and it's calming and grounding, and it's sort of a nice thing to do. And there's a growing body of evidence that supports that time spent in nature has health and wellness, like measurable health and wellness benefits, like decreasing feelings of anxiety and lowering stress and increasing mood and increasing attentional capacity, which is really interesting. Attentional capacity is like how much brain space you have to like attend to a task or to many tasks. And so, you know, getting outside at lunchtime on a stressful day is actually really good for your productivity, as well as helping you feel good. We also know that birds can be the gateway to spending time in nature. They have outrageous plumage. They make all kinds of bizarre noises. They can fly. I mean, how cool is that? And for lots of people, often myself included, enjoying birds is the reason that we go outside or look outside or listen outside and get all these health and wellness benefits. We know that birding is the fastest growing leisure activity in the US. 20-year-old statistics told us that 85 million Americans enjoyed wild birds in some way. And that number has only significantly increased in the last 2 years when more people noticed the birds near them during the pandemic lockdowns and tuned in to things closer to them. We know that birding has the potential to be inclusive and accessible. Potential, which means we've got some work to do, but we can do it. And we also know that 1 in 4 Americans has a disability. 1 in 4, that's not a small number. It's the largest minority, and it's the only one you can join at any time. 20 million Americans have a mobility challenge. They have trouble or are unable to walk, and 7 million are blind or have low vision. I know low vision seems sort of vague in regular English. My clinical background as an occupational therapist is in blindness and low vision services, and low vision is actually a technical term. It's basically the point at which glasses no longer correct your vision enough. And so there's lots of different eye conditions that can cause low vision. You might have heard of cataracts if they're not removed, or macular degeneration or glaucoma. And this is about our future selves. This is as pessimistic as it's going to get, I promise. But you never know what's coming, right? You never know if there's a new medical diagnosis on the horizon for you or someone else you go birding with or would like to go birding with. You never know about injuries, you know, things happen, right? Life happens. And it's really important that we keep in mind that this is not a conversation about another group of people if you don't identify as having an access challenge yourself. This is just a conversation about all of us. And if you're 95 years old, I don't know, maybe not, but for me, when I'm 95 years old, I would like to be going birding too. So this is just about everybody. So Birdability, our mission is to share the joys of birding with people who have disabilities and to ensure birding is accessible to everybody. We do this in 3 different ways, and like the spokes of a wheelchair's wheel, they keep rolling forward and feeding into each other, and they sort of rely on each other as well to kind of keep rolling forward. So we want to address the physical accessibility of birding locations, and I'm going to talk more with you about some of the components that make up a truly accessible birding location. We want to empower a welcoming and inclusive birding community, because if the places that you go birding are accessible, but the people and the groups and the organizations and the culture around birding is not. That can be just as much of a barrier as a flight of stairs. And we want to introduce people with access challenges to birding, to all the joys, all the wonderful things you can get from birding. And there is so much you can get out of birding. And that's something that you guys can definitely help us do. We focus on people with mobility challenges, blindness or low vision, chronic illness, intellectual or developmental disabilities, mental illness, and those who are neurodivergent, deaf or hard of hearing, or who have other health concerns. But inherently, our work benefits a bunch of other folks, including parents with strollers. That's a mobility challenge. Grandparents with toddlers, older people just slowing down, people with new medical diagnoses, folks with dodgy knees. This is me. I have a dodgy knee. I woke up one morning 3 years ago and I couldn't straighten my right knee for no apparent reason. It took until February this year, I think, to get a diagnosis, because there was nothing that any specialist could find wrong with it. But I couldn't straighten it, which meant that walking even half a mile suddenly, from being previously fit and healthy in every respect, I planned a summer of hiking up the White Mountains in New Hampshire. We lived in Boston at the time. My husband's in the army, so we get moved around a lot. And yeah, I couldn't do half a mile without being in a lot of pain. Benches suddenly became really important to my ability to access outdoor spaces. Benches, benches, benches. So many people need benches. There's takeaway number one. Again, this is just about our future selves. For folks who are blind or have low vision, or who have other visual processing disabilities, or who are unable to watch the screen tonight, everything that is presented visually I will verbalize, so you won't miss out on things that are presented visually. There's a photo on the screen right now. There's two white women looking really excited. They've both got their hands in the air, like with big grins on their faces. One is she's sort of half leaping into the air. Another one is seated in a manual wheelchair. That woman is Virginia Rose. She's the founder of Birdability. She lives in Texas, and she'd been birding for quite a while when she realized that she never saw another wheelchair user out birding, and she thought, I wonder if people just don't realize all of the joys they could be getting from birding. A sense of community, feeling like you belong somewhere, friendships, opportunities to learn more, confidence from, struggling with identifying birds and getting better at it. And, yeah, I did that thing that was hard. Or independence, going to trails that you don't know their accessibility and managing them. And like, that feels really good. And the birds themselves, they're pretty great. So, all these joys of birding, and that spark is what started her and myself up on this journey of birdability. She says that there's a lot of difficulties that she faced birding, though, and a lot of folks with different access challenges, not knowing about the trail conditions ahead of time, railing heights, steps. She'll tell you that one small step, there's only just one step, walking people will say, but that could be the difference between someone being able to access that trail independently or needing help. And needing help, a lot of people don't really want to need help. Being able to do a thing by yourself without asking someone else for assistance is really important to a lot of people. And yeah, so one small step might be a big barrier for someone. So she says that difficulty and uncertainty lead to empowerment and joy, which I think this photo illustrates beautifully. Virginia and her sister, that's her sister, had been birding in East Texas, and they'd found a Swainson's warbler, which is notoriously difficult to find in spring migration. They pass through Texas. The other thing that's visible in this photo is Virginia's van. It's a wheelchair accessible van. There's a ramp coming out of the right-hand side of it down to the parking lot surface. You may have noticed at supermarkets and other public places, there's accessible parking spaces, and there's van accessible parking spaces. And this is why van accessible parking spaces exist. If there is not an access aisle, that diagonally striped wide bit over to the right of the van in this photo, so with enough space so that Virginia's ramp can deploy and she has enough space to get on and off it in her wheelchair, if that doesn't exist, or if someone has parked in the access aisle or left their shopping cart in the access aisle, please, if you take nothing away from today, please never obstruct the access aisle in a parking lot. That can really mess up someone's day, because if you can't get out of your vehicle, you can't access whatever it is you're trying to access. So keep that in mind. So other things to consider when we're talking about accessible birding locations. Most everything that I'm going to share with you tonight, there is much more to share. I just had to pick out select highlights because we only have an hour. There's heaps more information on our website, birdability.org. So if you're half interested in knowing more about any of this stuff, please pull up our website and dig right in. There's a lot of resources up there. I get feedback all the time, which is really encouraging, that it's a really wonderful website. So please go check it out. That's why it's there. I can hold all this information myself, but that doesn't help anybody else. So go look at our website. So here's a couple of access considerations. We just talked about parking. If you can't park, you can't access the location if you're driving or if you're a passenger in a vehicle. Public transport, maybe bike paths from local neighborhoods, there's how do you get to the location? That's step number one. Finding out trail information ahead of time is really important to a lot of different folks with access challenges. Many locations, nature reserves and so on, will say on their website, we have an accessible trail, it's 1/2 a mile long, and you're like, great, is there any more information? Are there benches along it? Is it in the shade? What we need more information than just that. And so detailed accessible access information ahead of time is really valuable on websites, in your outing event descriptions. Tell us where you're going. Tell us in the nitty-gritty where you're going. That means I know if I can come along. And at the trailhead. And I know where y'all are relative to the United States, it's kind of a hotspot of having this fabulous access information available on trail signs and so on. Length, surface type, tread width, really important. If you are using a mobility device, you need to be able to pass someone else without being forced off the trail, because especially if it's a paved trail, if you are forced off it, you may not be able to get back on it, which is a big problem. Grade or slope, the steepness, really important to a lot of people, and the cross slope, that's how much of an angle you're on as you're traveling down that trail. And that's really important again to a lot of people using mobility devices and people who have gait difficulty or who have balance issues, like being on a slopey kind of surface can really be a problem. So this kind of information is invaluable. Please include this in your outing event descriptions. And if you are any way associated with a nature center or state park or other place where people recreate, please include this on your website. Don't just include it at the trailhead. Bathroom accessibility is really important for a lot of people. And I should have said at the start, if you have an access challenge or if you go birding or in the outdoors frequently with someone who does, please, I would love to sort of meet you via the chat. Please share, if you feel comfortable, don't feel obliged, about your access challenge. If any of the things I'm saying like ring true for you, or if you have a different experience, please share it. I'd love to learn from you. And the more we talk about this stuff, the more people become aware of it, the more people act to improve this. So this is a good thing to be talking about. And if you're not disabled, please chime in too if you have any comments along the way. I definitely look forward to reading the chat. So bathrooms, like any built structure, bathrooms have a whole lot of components that make them accessible or not to a whole lot of different people. The door width, the stall size, Are there grab bars to help with transfers on and off the toilet? Can you turn on or off the taps or the faucets on the sink with only one hand, or do you need two, which you might not have available? Can you reach the soap or the towels or the toilet paper from where you are located? Lots of stuff goes into bathroom accessibility, and I want to highlight portaloos because most of these photos, by the way, are taken at my favorite accessible trail, which is Echo River Spring Trail at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. We were stationed there, just near there at Fort Knox. It's a wonderful accessible trail and a fabulous birding in the spring. Oh my goodness, just like indigo buntings everywhere. And they have 2 portaloos at the trailhead, and they are both accessible portaloos. And the thing about accessible portaloos is that only some people can use a standard size portaloo, but everybody can use an accessible portaloo, right? I mean, I would prefer to use an accessible portaloo if given the choice, because especially when it's warm, they never quite feel as hot and sticky and like stuffy inside. I don't physically have need for an accessible portaloo, but I would prefer to use one. And this is the thing with so much about this access and inclusion stuff. Very often what you do, you think only benefits one group of people, but it very often benefits a whole lot more, and there's no negative to doing it, right? So if you're ever involved in renting portaloos for any reason, events, trail maintenance stuff, just get the accessible portaloo, because then everyone can use the bathroom. Interpretive signs have a lot of access considerations too. I love a good interpretive sign. I love the opportunity to learn more about the place or the birds or the animals or the cultural history. But there's a few things. Interpretive signs should be connected to the trail by the same surface, so that someone who needs to get really close to it can without being forced off the trail. When there's an interpretive sign like 3 feet from the edge of the trail, only some people can access that. Only some people can read that far away. It needs to be right up on the same surface of the trail. It also needs to be at a height that someone standing could read and someone seated, because sometimes there are big, tall signs, and that's great unless you're not a standing person. National park site, NPS sites very often have these done really, really well. We need to see large print text, size 16 to 18, really good contrast between the text and the background color, so it pops up, so it doesn't blend in and sort of fade away. We want a pretty plain, non-distracting background for the same reason, helps increase the readability. We love seeing tactile features on the sign. The top right of that sign, that thing is a mock-up of sycamore tree bark, which this sign references the sycamore trees on this floodplain. And again, a lot of you might think that, oh well, maybe just folks who are blind or have low vision would need that, but there's a lot more people with print disabilities like dyslexia, visual processing disorders, little kids who aren't reading a whole paragraph, folks who don't read English, maybe it's not their first language, or maybe they've got dementia, or maybe they're like me and they just like putting their hands on things as a way to learn. All kinds of people benefit from a tactile feature on a sign. And again, with access, very, very often it's more people than you realize who will benefit from that access feature. The other thing I really love seeing with interpretive signs is an audio component. Some places will have like a wand or like a media player thing that you loan from the visitor center, and you go around and you press the buttons that correlate to the numbers on the sign, which is great. It's really good. That's a great solution if the visitor center's open. I mean, during COVID, the visitor center at Mammoth Cave wasn't open for like a year, or even Sunday afternoon, like it's not open, but you can still access the trails. So it's great. It's a bit limited. Another option that a lot of places have are QR codes that you scan with your smartphone, and up pops a link, and it takes you to a website, and then you can maybe press the button and it'll start playing the recording, which is again great if you have a smartphone. Not everyone can afford a smartphone. Let me tell you, disability is expensive. What about if you haven't got any battery left? What about if you're at Mammoth Cave and there is 0 cell reception in the entire national park? So again, it's definitely better than nothing, but it's still limited. The best version of this that I've ever come across is that thing that's next to this sign. It is a little tower. It's about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, 3 feet. I don't know, I operate in meters, I'm from Australia. It's solar powered, which means it's always open. And you just press the button and it reads aloud the text on the sign. Awesome, awesome. Another thing that impacts access to birding locations is maintenance. No matter how accessible your birding location is when it's first constructed, if you do not maintain it, it will not stay that way. It's in the outdoors, like weather happens. And I should clarify, birding locations, we're talking about trails, but we're also talking about bird blinds, observation platforms, feeder stations, car birding sites. These are all places, public places that folks might go birding that might be really accessible to them, or maybe not. A little bit of work to do. So maintenance, yeah, we've got to make sure the vegetation, shrubs and bushes don't encroach on the width of the trail, because the trail width will be decreased then, which is a problem for a lot of people. Even low branches or tree trunks that come down over the surface of the trail, the recommendation is 7 feet. There should be no vegetation 7 feet above the trail surface, because someone who's sighted like me, I would just dodge that. Like, I probably wouldn't even think about it. I just avoid that hazard. But someone who's blind or has low vision, very well might walk right into that. And I have been told by plenty of folks with visual disabilities who are birders and nature lovers that it's not very fun, and being knocked unconscious while trying to go birding is not a great day. So keep that in check if you are a site manager. Leaves is also really important, or if you're a site manager, but also if you're holding accessible outings, and when you're choosing where to do it, like, this is stuff you need to be thinking about. Snow, I don't know if that's relevant in Mono Basin, probably obvious as a potential barrier. It's not always easy to plow immediately after snowfall, but if there is snow in your area and you have some kind of regular plowing schedule, even if it's just, we don't plow on weekends because our plowing people don't work on weekends, put that on your website, because if it snows on Friday night, I know that it's not worth me driving 2 hours to your site to find that I can't access it. So sharing information, this is big. The information gap is a huge barrier to access. So the more you can get out there for people to find out ahead of time, it's just better for everybody. And leaves are a thing. A big thick carpet of leaves in the fall particularly can make a real slip hazard for anybody, but they can be so thick that folks with gait difficulties or who are using mobility devices might not be able to move through the leaves. So we want a clear trail if it's being advertised as an accessible location. Railings are also a big consideration. Railings are like the top bit on the safety barrier. We definitely want safety barriers. We don't want anyone falling off cliffs, but unfortunately, they're very often designed so that that top plank of wood is angled so that the widest part is facing the trail user. And if you were seated, such as folks who use wheelchairs or scooters, or who are sitting on their walking frame to give themselves a rest, that is very often right at eye line. And that might not matter if you're just going for a hike, but if you are trying to see birds, that's a really big visual obstruction that can, it's not, the thing is, there's so many ways to design a safety barrier. There's no reason to design it like that. Once you know, plenty of people, there's no shame here, right? A lot of this stuff, it's just people just don't know. That's what my job is to share this knowledge. Can that plank of wood be rotated so that the skinny bit faces trail users? Probably. A really cool version of a safety barrier is this one at Mammoth Cave, where 2 sections of the barrier are completely removed. It's like 1/2 inch thick, like plexiglass, or what's the other word? It's thick plastic stuff. It's clear. No one's broken that. That's intact. Anyone can see through it. Little kids in strollers see the same thing as their parents standing behind them. Toddlers don't have to peer through that like jail bar cell barrier. They can see the same stuff. I can rest my dodgy knee on that bench. Oh, look at that bench. It has armrest. Yes. It has a backrest. Yes. It is on the same surface of the trail as the trail is. It's not over an island of grass, like a bench island in a sea of grass. That's not accessible to a lot of people who need the bench. I can rest my knee and see the same things. And Virginia in her wheelchair can see the same stuff out of that because the visual obstruction's been removed. Awesome, awesome. So now you know about some of the key access considerations of birding locations. You can help us build this really cool resource that we do with National Audubon. They partner with us on this, the Birdability map. It's crowdsourced. That means you can add to it. And we're trying to plug that information gap about the detailed information about accessibility of birding locations. This is what I needed 3 summers ago when I suddenly couldn't do what I had expected to be able to do that summer. And we're in the army, we get moved a lot. I didn't know where all the accessible locations were in Boston or in Massachusetts or New England. Like I really didn't. And gosh, it would have been great to go to one resource and find all my options and find if there were benches and find if the trail was only half a mile or less. Oh, it would have been fabulous, but it exists now. So submitting to the Birdability map involves completing a Birdability site review. You can print off a 5-page checklist, and I know it looks like a lot. I promise it's not hard. This was designed so that it's as objective as possible. We don't want you making judgment calls because you don't know every single person with every single kind of access challenge. You don't. And different people can do different things. Different people want to do different things. So instead of saying things like, oh, it's not wheelchair friendly, maybe not for some wheelchair users, but for others, maybe it's just fine. Maybe it's the just right challenge that they're hoping for. Side note, many different people use wheelchairs for many different reasons. Some people can walk but need a wheelchair for certain situations. Not everyone who uses a manual chair, who uses a wheelchair has had a spinal cord injury. Very broad. Disability is really diverse, y'all. There's so many different access challenges, and it's usually not appropriate to ask someone for their medical history. But just keep in mind that this is a broad group of folks. That's why the site review is 5 pages long. But all you have to do is report on what is there or what isn't there. And that way you can let other people decide what they want to do for themselves. Much more empowering that way. And when you submit to the Birdability map, a yellow diamond pops up. There's over 1,000 sites, by the way. If you would benefit from this, please go and explore the Birdability map. That's what it's there for. You can link directly to a site review as well if you're holding outings. We want you to include some key information in your outing event description, but you can say, for more information, excuse me on the cough, please visit, the Birdability map and link directly. And we're actually working on a really big update right now with National Audubon, which is really exciting. So it's probably a couple months away, but there's going to be a big update on what features are available, which is really, really cool. So shift of topic here. I am on a mission to redefine birding as the act of enjoying wild birds. As broad and as simple as that. I could talk about this for an hour. So instead, I'm going to put a link in the chat once I stop talking, because multitasking is hard, to the article I wrote for Audubon magazine about this. There are so many ways to enjoy wild birds, and none of them are wrong. Bird watching, which is what I grew up talking about. My parents are birders. I grew up in Australia. Everyone's a bird watcher. Bird watching is great, but my clinical background is in blindness and low vision. And I know, I've met plenty of people, and I know that not everybody watches wild birds. There's also, in some parts of the birding community in North America, a bit of a hierarchy about birders and bird watchers, and we don't need a hierarchy. We don't need rank. Get rid of it. Get rid of it out of birding. It doesn't help anybody except people trying to stroke their egos, and they can go do that somewhere else. Using birding for everybody means that we have to be just inherently that much more welcoming and inclusive as a community and as a hobby for any way that someone enjoys wild birds, whether that's moving down a trail, whether that's stationary birding, whether that's birding from their bed, because that day they're having a really bad day with fatigue and they can't get out of bed, but they can open their window and listen to the birds or see the birds at their feet or in their backyard. With binoculars or not with binoculars, not everyone can afford binoculars. Not everyone can use binoculars or feels comfortable using binoculars for a whole lot of different reasons. I could talk about that for at least 15 more minutes. Binoculars are a tool. They are not the essential thing that make you a birder or not. They're not. They're just helpful for some people. That's not the thing that makes you a birder. Neither is knowledge of bird identification. Culturally, we have this really big emphasis on being able to identify birds effectively and efficiently and quickly. And why? I mean, it doesn't, if I don't know the name of that bird over there, it doesn't make it any less spectacular. Make up your own name, like whatever, do your thing. The only reason that having, not the only reason, but the reason to have a shared language around bird names is that it's more efficient to communicate with other people about that species of bird that you saw. Sure, cool, but it doesn't, that's not the thing that makes you a birder. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that makes you a birder is that you enjoy wild birds. Now, everybody is always allowed to identify however they like. That goes across the board. But so if you want to keep calling yourself a bird watcher, please do that. I'm not telling you that never use that word again. I'm just trying to encourage you, especially if you're attached to a group or organization, about the words we use. And they do matter. They have impact and they can invite people in or not intentionally, or you might not have realized. And so if you feel more included by this definition, please use it about yourselves. We are in charge of the language that we use. It's always evolving. We can redefine birding. We can. I'm doing it. Are you in? So here's my suggestions. Again, I'm not trying to cancel these words. I'm just trying to prompt a bit more awareness and a bit more broad kind of thinking around this topic. So I'm encouraging us, suggesting that we go from bird watcher to birder. And again, I definitely don't want to make this like a banned word, but just to get the juices flowing, I'm suggesting that we go from bird walk to bird outing or field trip, because not everybody can walk. And if you're holding an event, especially if you're holding an accessible bird event, calling it a bird outing might just make someone who can't walk or who can't walk very far or very fast feel like maybe they could participate. Because if they're new, a bird walk might sound really intense and you know, hardcore, and they might not realize that it won't be like that. And plus, there are so many other kinds of bird outings. Bird walks are not the only kind. You can have stationary birding events, you can have virtual birding events, you can have car birding events, you know, and some of those, actually a lot of those, are a lot more accessible to a lot more people. So just consider that. While we're on language, handicapped and impaired generally are considered these days by the disability community to be pretty out of date, or even downright offensive. Now, a lot of older folks particularly, this might be the words they're using about themselves. Don't tell them, please don't tell them, Freya from Birdability said you can't call yourself that. Do not do that. Everybody is always allowed to identify as they like. But if you're talking about other people or general sort of, you know, general kind of conversation, there is nothing wrong with being disabled. Therefore, there is no shame in being disabled. Therefore, there is nothing wrong in calling yourself or other people disabled, or someone has a disability. Normal, though, is probably one to avoid, because what is normal? You probably mean that someone is non-disabled or sighted or hearing or neurotypical. Wheelchair bound is another one we really want to avoid. This is definitely across the board. This sort of language implies that someone is completely confined to their wheelchair. They suffer and they they have nothing else, and like they're just, you know, it's so disempowering, this kind of language. Wheelchairs do not do anything but bind someone. Wheelchairs are freedom machines. Without a wheelchair, most wheelchair users would be much more restricted in the things that they can do, in the places they can go. Just talk about people being wheelchair users. They just use a wheelchair to help them get around. And because we're losing impaired, vision impaired is less and less used. Instead, you can say someone is blind or has low vision, or they have a visual disability. Again, more information on language use on our website if you want to check it out. It's not enough to just think you're being inclusive. You have to be intentionally inclusive. This is the difference between assuming people should just know that they're welcome to come versus actively going out and saying, I would really like it if you came to this event. We've built this for you. Please come join us. There's a big difference. Intentionally inclusive, it always takes more effort and more time. That's the intentional part of it. And sometimes it takes more money, but not always. So what can you do as an outing leader or another birder to be sure that you're being welcoming and inclusive and intentional about those things in the birding community? Smile and say hello to other birders. Not every birder you meet is going to want to be your best friend. A lot of people go to nature to be alone. That's okay. Don't force yourself on anyone, but just smiling and saying hello can really make a difference. And the saying hello bit's really important too, because not everyone will see your smile. So verbalize your friendliness. Include a welcome statement at the beginning of outings. This is really easy. And I tell you what, this makes such a big difference. It blows me away every time I lead an outing with the welcome, and I always have a welcome statement at the start, how immediately friendly everyone just sort of is with each other versus having to like outcompete or prove themselves. Yeah, again, we don't need that. We don't need that. And so a welcome statement, include your pronouns, mine is she, her. This is important because folks who are transgender or non-binary you may assume by their appearance on the pronouns that they use, and they may use different pronouns. So sharing your pronouns up front invites other folks to share theirs. And you can have some subtle behavioural expectations in this too. So my welcome statement, something like, hi everybody, my name's Freya, my pronouns are she, her. I'm really excited to go birding with you today. I don't know everything there is to know about birds. Nobody does. So if you have any questions, please let me know. If I don't know the answer, please ask the folks around you. You know, we'll figure it out together. There'll be things that you're teaching me the whole day that I don't know. So I'm excited to learn with you along the way. That's subtle behavioural expectations, by the way. We're all being friends here. The next thing I do is I get folks to go around in a circle and I invite people to share their name, their pronouns. And if I say, if you have an access challenge and it would be helpful for all of us to know about it, please let us know. That using that language means that people who don't want to tell you about their medical history don't have to. No, you're not kind of forcing people to do it. But for a lot of folks, it feels really good to have a whole part of their identity acknowledged. And it can also be really helpful sometimes to tell everyone all at once, instead of having to tell every single person who comes to talk to you, I'm deaf on my right side, please talk to me from my left. Just tell everyone at once. And I give an example of this, and I say, you know, I have a dodgy knee. And so if there's benches around, I'm going to be sitting on them. Like, that's okay. It's okay. Really, anytime you can normalize disability and access challenges is a good thing. We are pushing against some serious stigma, even though it shouldn't be stigma. And so doing this and inviting folks to share their names, I'm going to forget people's names, but the fact that I've heard them immediately makes me feel more friendly with them, because we're friends now, right? Like, we know each other's name. It makes a difference. This is so easy to do. Don't single someone out because of a difference unless it is relevant to do this. And if you do it one-on-one. If someone shows up your outing and you're holding an accessible outing and everyone else appears to not have a disability, and don't forget, there are lots and lots of invisible disabilities, you won't know unless someone tells you. and someone shows up with crutches and you're like, oh my gosh, look, someone's here with crutches. Don't do that. That's so awkward. Oh my gosh, that doesn't feel welcoming and inclusive. Instead, if it's relevant, maybe it might be like, hey, look, I see you using crutches. They know they're using crutches. It's not offensive to call that out, like quietly, like one-on-one, like not in front of everyone, like, but they're not going to be offended that you notice this. Hey, I see you using crutches. Up ahead, there's like 4 or 5 stairs. I don't know if you would need some help getting up them, or if we need to find another way around them. Like, let me know how we should game plan that. Most people will be really grateful that you noticed and you wanted to do something about including them, and that you noticed that they have a different access challenge than other members of the group. Most people will be glad that you did that. Offer help, but be prepared to graciously accept no. Not everybody needs help, even if you think they might, and not everybody wants help. But some people will be really glad that you did offer help, because they might feel uncomfortable asking from it, especially if you've never met before. But if you offer help and they say no thanks, don't get all hoiked up about it, like, fine, I was just trying to be nice. That's not cool. Don't do that. Just be cool. Instead, say, yeah, no worries. Well, let me know if you need a hand later. I'll be around. And if they would like some help, then don't just assume you know what they need. Don't just jump in, because you don't know exactly. They're the expert on what they need. So the next question is, cool, how would you like me to help you? And let them guide you. Believe someone if they identify a bird. Trust but verify. This is big. This is really big. I know a lot of Black, Indigenous, and people of colour birders. This happens to a lot of women birders, a lot of young birders, a lot of birders who have different accents that this happens to. It is so discouraging. If I say, hey guys, look, there's an American redstart, and someone's like, American redstart. It is so discouraging. Just because I have a different accent than you does not mean I know nothing about North American birds. And if you're going to do that, I'm probably not going to come back birding with you. That's not being welcoming or inclusive. It's so easy to just have a slight attitude adjustment of trust but verify, which looks like, oh, cool, an American redstart, let's see, and then go see. And maybe it's not. And that's okay. Then you can have an opportunity to educate about what the difference between that bird and American redstart. But maybe it is. Why not just assume they've got it right and go from there? And be actively anti-racist. I'm not the best educator on anti-racism, but this is really, really important, particularly for white and white passing people. If Birdability was only concerned with being welcoming and inclusive of white, straight, cisgender disabled birders, we would not be doing our job, because of course there are Black disabled birders and there are queer disabled birders. It's really important that we are acknowledging all people with all their identities. Anti-racism is not the same as not being racist. Not being racist is neutral. Being anti-racist is active, it's ongoing, it's hard, and it's really, really important. Please Google this. There's a lot of resources online. There's some amazing anti-racism educators on Instagram. There's some great books. This is important stuff. Please do this thing. Don't force someone to opt out. Go out of your way to allow them to opt in. I know we're getting short on time, so I'm going to zoom through these. There is more information on our website about what welcoming and inclusive organisations can do. Create an inclusion and diversity statement. Make it publicly available and use it to hold everyone attached to your organisation accountable about the things you are going to do to be more welcoming and inclusive and encourage more diversity and equity in birding and the outdoors. Hold accessible bird outings as part of your regular programming, regularly, not like one time, because that's sort of token effort. You'll find birds, I promise, and accessible birding locations, and include all that detailed accessibility information in the outing event description, and keep doing it. Include image descriptions for all social media posts and alternative text in your social media posts if that's built into the platform and on websites. There's more information about this on our website. This is for folks who use screen reader software, which reads aloud the text on a screen. It can't read a photo. There's no text. It can't read an infographic. It's a graphic. It doesn't have text like an email does. So image descriptions describe it's pretty straightforward what the photo is showing or what text is included in infographic. Because if you don't do this, you are forcing someone to opt out of the information that you are putting out to share with people. Why would you exclude a portion of the population? Again, this intentionality, it doesn't cost anything to do this, but it takes more time and effort, maybe like 2 minutes per post at most, but you have to be intentional about this stuff. Include closed captions for all webinars and meetings, even if no one has asked for them. In Zoom, they're called subtitles. Folks who are deaf or hard of hearing, absolutely. People with auditory processing disorders, people who aren't expecting an Australian accent. Again, a lot of people, probably more than you realize, benefit from closed captions. If anyone asks to enable closed captions, do not debate with them why they need it. That is so dehumanizing and not your business, frankly. But just enable them. Just trust people to tell you what they need. Why would they ask for them if they didn't need them? And tell people in your event descriptions, closed captions will be provided, because that invites people to opt in. Remove financial barriers to access whenever possible. It's not always possible, I understand, but sometimes you can get a grant or a scholarship, or you can have a pay what you will model. Disability is expensive. There's a lot more historically marginalized folks who don't have a lot of disposable income. Anytime you can remove those barriers is a good thing. And provide honorariums for speakers and consultants. This is really important. This is an equity thing. It isn't okay to expect someone to give their time and their energy educating or entertaining you for free. That might be presenting, that might be writing for a big publication, that might be inviting folks to come out, local disability community members to come out and give you feedback on the accessible trail that you've just built, which is great. You've built an accessible trail, great. You're asking for feedback from the users, amazing. Pay them for that feedback. A lot of people don't have the capacity to do this stuff for free, and it's not fair to ask of it. Yeah, it costs money, so budget for it. We have lots of resources on our website. There's more coming in all the time. Please visit birdability.org or follow us on social media at Birdability, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We have the Birdability map. You know about that already. We have a webpage about adaptive birding equipment, which is really cool. Stuff like wheelchair mounted scopes, really awesome. We have a Facebook group called Birdability Birders. Please come join if you have an access challenge or if you are doing this work. We have the Birdability blog. I love using the Birdability blog monthly to amplify the experiences of birders with access challenges. I promise you will learn something every time you read it. It's really awesome, and I hope that more people will see themselves represented in these blog posts. We have virtual programs, often a really accessible programming option for a lot of people with access challenges, and we have a lot more coming. So please check out our website. Please share the links with anyone, any organization or individual who you think might benefit. That's why they're there. Same goes with our social media posts. Please share or repost stories, any of our posts. Because birding is for everybody and everybody. My email address is info@birdability.org. Heads up, my inbox is crazy. It's a good problem to have. It just means that it might take me a week or two to get back to you. So please bear with me on that. And because we are a brand new nonprofit, every donation is so very appreciated. So I'm going to stick in the chat the link to our donate page. You can send us a check or donate online. Don't feel obliged if you can't afford it or this didn't speak to you, but if it did, even a $5 is really appreciated. We're so new. So thanks. I look forward to taking some questions.
All right. I don't see any questions in the question and answer box, but if as you type in your questions, I have one or two here for you, Freya, and then we'll hit our 5 p.m. and take a little break. Thank you so much, first of all. That was wonderful. We all have so much to learn, and it's really great to have such a clear and concise and comprehensive checklist to help us make our area, our festival, more accessible to everyone. So I really appreciate you doing this work across the country and maybe even the globe. I don't know if have you been doing some international stuff too? Yes. So one of my first questions is, are there any like specific funding sources or help finding grants that can help bring some funds to like renovate certain areas that aren't very accessible? And what should we look out for there?
Yeah, so I would love it if I had the time. I am very time poor, to have a page on our website, or I could be like, go there. That's all the things I know about grant sources. I don't have that doesn't exist yet. Give me a year. There are lots of grants around. There are lots of grants about increasing access to the outdoors, about increasing outdoor engagement with historically marginalized communities. There's lots of grants around health and wellness. This ties into that. Disability stuff. There are lots of grants. There are lots of national grants. There are lots of state grants. There are lots of local grants. Please dig in. They exist. They definitely exist, and there's a lot more coming. And then there's really awesome partner organizations. And I understand that California state parks have a lot of good stuff around this. So maybe there's a way to partner with other folks nearby who could at least help you find grants and even, you know, be partners on the grant as well. So yeah, there's plenty of it. I wish I could be like, apply to these guys, but I'm sorry.
Still, it's good to know that it's out there, and that, you know, each organization that has, you know, control or at least some power in creating these accessibility areas. That we have trails, a lot of trails here around Mono Lake, but not all of them are extremely accessible. A lot of them are kind of accessible, but sure, it could be better.
Yeah, so, and we're not trying to make like every single trail in the universe accessible, like 1000% accessible, because that would be ridiculous. Like, we're not like hiking up mountains and going to like pave 8,000 switchbacks so it stays at 5% gradient the whole time. Like, that would be bizarre. Like, we're not trying to do that. It's just that the trails that are being advertised as accessible, they sort of need to live up to that standard. And there are also many other trails that could, with a couple of little things, they could just be a lot better from that standpoint. So yeah, and don't be discouraged if it seems like there's so many things that need doing to fix, because you can just do like one thing a year. Like, get a little grant that just helps you buy 4 benches. Great, fabulous. You know how you just improve the accessibility of that 1 mile trail a bucket load. You know, keep working on it like that. You don't have to do it all at once. And there are very few places that are like perfectly accessible in every way. So anything you can do to improve the access of a location is a win.
Great. Since we are running low on time, just going to ask you one more question. You told us your favorite accessible trail. Do you have a favorite bird that you would like to share?
My Australian favorite bird is the rainbow lorikeet, which were really unusual to see when I was a kid, and they're rainbow. How cool is that? They're now really common in my family home. My parents still live there, and there's lots of rainbow lorikeets around, which is a real treat. I have to say a white-breasted nuthatch. I think that's a Birdability logo, and I didn't choose the Birdability logo. There's a whole blog post on why Birdability has a white-breasted nuthatch as a logo, if you're curious. But they are gorgeous and really cute, and I mean, all nuthatches are fabulous and so fun to watch. So yeah, I should probably say that.
Well, thank you so much, Freya, and folks, check out the website, check out the resources. Such a wonderful talk from you. Really appreciate you being here tonight.